Hello and welcome to Press TV Spotlight. I'm Marzieh Hashemi. Thanks so much for being with us. Well, indirect talks between Iran and the United States were held on Saturday in Oman. Iran's Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi and the U.S. Special Envoy for Middle East Affairs Steve Witkoff represented each side, with the Omani Foreign Minister serving as the go-between during this indirect meeting with the two. The two sides have decided to meet again next week. Now, the question at hand is it possible to negotiate with the United States and have Washington abide by its commitments or not? Well, stay with us for this spotlight. I'd like to welcome my guests to the program. Reza Vedadi, academic researcher and author out of Muscat. And Ali Hami, writer and political analyst out of South Lebanon. Well, welcome to the program. I'd like to start this off with Ali. Your perspective, Ali, why do you think that these talks have been held at this time?
Thanks for having me with you. Greetings to you and to your guest. I would like to start to say that this talk is already been seen by most of the analysts that it's in the region interest. That's what the the American requirements that they are trying to impose on Iran in something that Iran doesn't want to do. I'm talking about not having or containing nuclear weapons, and it's forbidden by the Iranian high authority. So what America is asking Iran to do, it's already been done. But on the other side, we can see that the Iranians are asking for security and stability for the region. We are asking for some kind of sticking for the principles to have the stability of the region. And as we see, it was at a high-level negotiations mediated by Oman in Muscat, and we see that the Iranian was represented by the foreign minister, and the American by the presidential envoy to the Middle East, Witkoff. So I think there is no problem from the Iranian perspective to have such kind of negotiations, because no nuclear weapons in Iran. There is no intention to have nuclear weapon by the Iranians. So it means going into this negotiations, if we can see it exactly that 2015 it was big agreements between the Iranian and the American, but we can see now that Donald Trump wants to do it his way, not Biden's, not Obama's, not the Democrat Party's way.
Well, let's look at that, something you just said, Ali, because you said that Iran is not after nuclear weapon, a nuclear bomb. I mean, this is something that has been said for decades, that Iran has no intention of creating a nuclear weapon. And yet we have seen time and time again this excuse being used to add more sanctions against Tehran. Do you think there's a possibility that this time around there's a different perspective, a different understanding? Because we know that some of those in the U.S. intelligence community has also said that Iran is not after a nuclear weapon, and it doesn't show any intention of even being interested in trying to have one.
I think, the next Saturday negotiation will be boosted by some technical team from both parties. And we know exactly from technical way, the United States had its weapon technology, nuclear weapon technology in 1942. And it took them about a couple years to produce the nuclear weapon. Exactly also the Soviet Union at that time, in 1947, it took them about when they granted the technical way to do the nuclear weapon, they did it in a couple years. We know exactly also that the Iranians started their nuclear research in Tehran starting by 1950s, and then it was a boom in 1991. Why Iran could not make in couple years a nuclear weapon? Because they did not want to do such. It's forbidden by religion, forbidden by law in Iran, and they can now, and 20 years ago, they could do their nuclear weapon. The technical teams next time, they will know exactly what the Iranians are trying to prove to the world, that they could do it tens of years ago, decades ago, but they don't want to do it.
All right.
All what the next step also, that the Americans are negotiating something that doesn't exist. The Iranians are discussing, in addition to what I have said, also to lift sanctions from Iran.
All right. Well,
on Iran.
Okay. Stay with me, Ali. Let me get Reza in on this discussion. Hey, Reza, I mean, some experts are saying that the U.S. actually wants to avoid an expanded war, and especially a direct one with Iran, especially due to the accessibility of American assets to Iran in the region. What are your thoughts about that? And do you think that that is having an effect on the U.S. wanting to talk right now, or how do you see it?
So I believe that the United States, from its history, has demonstrated that they don't negotiate with a country that is weak. We saw what happened in Libya, we saw what happened in Syria, we saw what happened in Iraq, we saw what happened in Afghanistan, and America only understands the ability to demonstrate power or then decide to negotiate with a country that has power. And Iran has demonstrated this, and we've plenty of reports from the Pentagon and other sources that demonstrate that Iran is in parity with the United States. That means that if war ever breaks out, if there's ever any kind of conflict between the United States and Iran, Iran will do as much damage, if not more damage, than the United States can do to Iran. And we've come to the point where they know they can't damage Iran's infrastructure regarding their nuclear facilities, their deep underground. And there's also been this talk about they have the B-2 and other stealth bombers. And recently we saw a video, only within this week, that Iranian drones were videoing and seeing B-2 bombers. So I think they know that there's no point of trying to go down that route. So they were looking for an off-ramp. And so they decided to do this direct or indirect. President Trump pushes it as a direct talk, but Iran pushes it as indirect talk. It doesn't matter what it is. There's discussions for both of them. And I think Iran's current administration, the current president and his policy is to try and negotiate with the United States. Obviously, he has to do it within the bounds of what's said by the establishment and Ayatollah Khamenei's guidelines. Because ultimately, to America, you can't show a weak position. And if you do, they try to take advantage of it. And for 46 years, they've tried to take advantage of Iran. So it's the nature of the United States, they're going to change overnight. So I think Iranians know this. They have some experience from the JCPOA and other experiences they have. So let's see how it goes. Positive. At the moment, they say it's positive, but I think we'll tell. I personally think there will be no final negotiation in the sense that Iran is not going to give up its nuclear enrichment, its nuclear program. The United States is never going to remove the sanctions. They've never removed sanctions from any country. Even at the moment, you look at Syria, it's been replaced by a person that they have put into place. And yet the United States has said we're not removing sanctions. So once America attaches sanctions to a country, that country needs to learn to look at other options like the BRICS, internal reform in management and economy and working with other countries, because the United States is on a decline and it's basically clinging to anything it can to try to keep its hegemonic power, which it can't. The world is changing. The power is shifting to the east.
Okay, well, Reza, let me just stay with you, because that was on one side the United States' reason for these talks. So what do you see as the main goal of Iran at this point in time for holding these talks?
So we have to remember that the JCPOA took place about 10 years ago. Around October or 15th of October, the snapback sanction clause of that JCPOA will expire. Now, what that was that any member of the party, except the United States, which left the treaty, the agreement, is able to try and push for the snapback, which means all the United Nations sanctions to come back. Not US sanctions, but United Nations, which means no other country is allowed to legally trade with Iran. And so this is a pressure tactic that the EU or the European party to the agreement tries to lever against Iran. And I think Iran is trying to play a smart game of trying to negotiate, and generally they do want to remove sanctions, but also burn time so that, but somehow, you started these negotiations, by the time they finish, we're closer to October, and that clause expires, so it will be more difficult for the Europeans to try to bring that clause back, because we know the Chinese won't do it. We know the Russians don't want to do it. We have a security agreement with the Russians, and there is an agreement with China, and China buys oil from Iran and sells cars and all kind of big trade with Iran. It wouldn't want to bring that clause back, so it's only the EU. And it seems the EU, even though America has betrayed the EU on a number of occasions, like Ukraine and other places, they still want to play the sidekick to the United States. And they don't seem to have their own independent policy towards Iran and how to manage Iran, which is really, because it's a big economy and it can do a lot for itself and do a lot with other countries. But unfortunately, this is the stage that we are, where that the EU, the European Union countries, and UK specifically, plays a very, very, very tricky and manipulative game with Iran and other countries.
Right. Of course, most of Europe is still occupied by the United States, so we can perhaps understand what's happening there. Well, let me cross back over to South Lebanon and get Ali back on the discussion. I mean, Ali, overall, what's your assessment of these talks that took place today in Oman?
Let's see what was happening since 2023 up to now, and we see that the area is going into something very difficult to the American benefits in the region. And we see that still Ukraine still on hot spot, the Middle East on hot spot. The export of the oil export is also in a critical condition right now in case of any war that will conclude in the area. I think there is priorities for the United States. First of all, they are changing the priority of American benefits right now, and not the Israelis one. So Donald Trump now is going into two wars, and he cannot tolerate two wars at the same time. We are talking about the economic war and the military war. Military war is still going on between the United States and its aggression against Yemen, and trying to impose some big pressure to subjugate Iran, and it will not happen, never now, never before, never tomorrow. And so the most priority for the United States now is the economic war, and we saw what happened last week, that about $10 trillion lost in the Wall Street. So the main priority now for the United States is to have a stability region. I'm talking about the area, our area here, because they cannot tolerate the contamination that will happen from this war. And also, we are talking about the vein of oil that it can flow from, the flood of it from our area. So this is two main reasons. And then we add to it that the United States is not in a place now to go into big war against a big country like Iran. We see up to now, I'm following exactly the movements of the American fleets. We can see the Fifth Fleet is still in Bahrain, and they are talking about the B2 in Diego Garcia, which is like 3,800 kilometers away. We saw the Sixth Fleet is fighting against Yemen, and is not going anywhere, still at the same place as Biden's war against Yemen, so no achievements. So I think that the best way for Donald Trump is to postpone the hot military war and replace it by a cold war in the region, so he can fulfill his war and priority economically against China. Another way to do it is to try to separate the Shanghai Agreement countries, especially Russia, Iran, and China, and I don't think they will succeed also. So I think the Iranian, the Chinese, and the Russian very aware of what the United States is trying to do, trying to make some kind of compromises in Europe, trying to make some compromises with Iran, and they want to let China by itself. Because the main priority for the United States right now is how to bring more dollars into the United States.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, Reza, your perspective, is it possible to reach an agreement with the United States, one that Washington will abide by?
Well, that's a very interesting question, because unfortunately, this president, and even during Obama and Biden's term, they didn't abide by the agreements that they had with Iran. We know that as soon as 10 years ago, JCPOA was signed, Obama never abided by the agreement, and sanctions weren't removed. Trump tore up U.S.'s part of the agreement in 2018. So they gave 2 to 3 years for United States to abide by the agreement, which they didn't. Sanctions were not removed. We all know that the Treasury Department would speak to major banks and investors and companies to not invest in Iran, to not participate in business in Iran. So I do not believe the United States' nature, its DNA, will allow it to, after having any agreement with Iran, enable Iran to, for the sanctions to be removed and for Iran to participate in Western-dominated global markets. I genuinely think that Iran needs to look to a broader way of reforming its economy and not rely on the West. And we've heard Ayatollah Khamenei repeatedly keep saying this to his audience and to the government and to management of the country. But sometimes it falls onto deaf ear. I was in Iran last week, and I can see that Iran has great potential. And I can see that Iran's problems are 20% sanctions, 80% internally reform and management. If these things inside Iran can be fixed, which I believe they can be fixed, I believe the sanctions will have no bite. Iran will be a very powerful economy, possibly in the top 10, even with sanctions, top 10 economy in the world. But it needs to rely on itself, as Ayatollah Khamenei and Imam Khomeini has repeatedly stated this since the beginning of the revolution.
Well, you just said a couple of things, Reza, I want to pick up right there, saying that you were in Iran last week and seeing the potential of the society. How much of this you think the soft war, because you mentioned Ayatollah Khamenei, and he talked many times about basically the media war that has been launched against the Islamic Republic of Iran. And we saw, like in the last, especially couple of weeks, the mainstream media and how they continue to talk about that the United States is going to attack, they're bringing their assets in the area. Of course, most people inside the country did not believe that the United States would directly attack. But at the same time, also talking about the sanctions and how it's crippled the Iranian economy. How much of that do you think plays as far as in public opinion and in dealing with the specific government of Iran at this time and their decision of actually sitting down and talking with the United States now?
Well, 100% the media war, and Ayatollah Khamenei alluded this very recently, that the media war is almost as important, if not even more important, than the hard war, the war of missiles that's taking place. Because what they're doing, the Western powers, they have media that shapes the narrative not only for audiences outside of Iran, but they try to shape the narrative for audiences in Iran. And we know there's more Iranian channels outside of Iran funded by anti-Iranian organizations and governments than there are actual Iranian Sada Sima, Iranian broadcasting channels, even though I know there's like 50 Iranian channels from inside Iran. And so what are these channels there for? It's very interesting. I said to someone, I said, the BBC charges UK residents license fee to broadcast them channels and programs. However, the BBC decides to give Iranians in Persian language 24-hour news for free. Why do you think that is? So I think, unfortunately, yes, there's Press TV, but Press TV is only one channel. Iranian state, Iranian broadcast, Iranian establishment needs to take the words of Ayatollah Khamenei and work on the soft power, work on the media, on the social medias, on interacting with audiences around the world using innovative ways, which exist right now, and encouraging them to come to Iran. Recently, I've seen there's a spike of people who are from outside of Iran who visit Iran from UK and America. On YouTube, you see these bloggers. That's probably something that's organized from within Iran. This should have been happening from 10 years ago. Because Iran, when people come into Iran, they don't believe that it's the same Iran that they see the media portray. So I think establishment of Iran needs to take the words of Ayatollah Khamenei and work on the soft power as Press TV does, but more. Press TV is only one channel. We need more of this to be to reach, and not just the Western audience. It's interesting, you go to Chinese or Russian and any other Indian audiences, and they watch CNN and other channels, not realizing that even though these countries are friends with Iran, they're getting their news through the enemies of Iran. So Iran needs to work on multiple fronts in the soft power.
Okay. Well, Ali, I want to get back to these discussions or negotiations itself. I mean, would you say that it is ironic that it was Trump who left the nuclear deal with Iran years ago, back in 2018, and now in 2025, Trump wants a deal with Iran? In your perspective, what has changed?
Donald Trump. Donald Trump wants this agreement to be according to his way, not Biden's, not Obama's. And we can see now maybe the United States is changing its priority, as I said. And I don't think the American goal is the nuclear weapon in Iran, because they know that Iran will not produce such weapon. But I think the enhancing of the nuclear program into the development of the technology and producing more technique and making Iran as an industrial country, and especially to prevent Iran from having a big, wide space program. And I think the space program enhanced by the nuclear power, not nuclear weapon, as they're trying to as you said, the media war against Iran. They are trying to misleading the people around the globe that Iran is trying from its nuclear program to have a nuclear weapon. And as I said before, if Iran wants a nuclear weapon, they can do it according to some American military analysts. They can do it in 5 days, but they won't, as they said.
Okay, stay with me, Ali, because I only have 30 seconds. Reza, give you the last chance. I mean, you just heard Ali about that. I mean, your thoughts, because Iran is advancing greatly with this nuclear technology in general and in so many other areas. Your overall thoughts about, because you mentioned that you feel that actually Iran didn't need the talks, but to concentrate on internal domestic policies. I mean, where do you see now that these talks have started, where do you see this going?
Well, let's be hopeful. God willing, Iran will be able to negotiate with the United States, so the pressure on Iranians and the economy of Iran is removed to some extent. But if not, I think this will be a good lesson that Ayatollah Khamenei has allowed the Iranians to learn, that they need to become self-reliant, self-belief to be able to develop and not look to the West, especially the United States.
All right, and on that note, thank you both for being with us. Reza Vedadi, academic, research and author out of Muscat, Ali Hami, writer and political analyst out of South Lebanon. And as always, viewers, we appreciate you being with us on another Spotlight. I'm Marcia Hashimi. Hope to see you right here next time. Goodbye.